Hi, my friends. It is David Ault. And as always, I'm so honored to have you join me here for the gathering. As I sit here, sort of collecting my breath and my thoughts and reviewing what I thought I was going to say, but practicing being in the moment, I cannot help but just reflect upon this past week and sort of the heaviness, the avalanche of feelings, and even despair from time to time as all of us inescapably view what is taking place in our world. It's an interesting time to live in um, when we are positioned in the instantaneous news that takes place around our world. And so you and I cannot escape the pictures and the horrors of genocide that are taking place on the other side of the world. It's heavy to continue to contemplate all of our friends and loved ones and all the other things that we read, the people who are challenged by medical debt, by loss, by suffering, by all of the multitudes of inequality that takes place in this dance that we call humanity. And so it's interesting to try to talk about balance because how does one have the audacity to get on here and talk about balance when there are people who would love to welcome some semblance of balance in their life who are hanging on by their last thread, who are watching everything that they've ever worked for be destroyed? Do you start to see how impotent it feels from time to time to even begin to bring um, a genuine, not just an empathy, but an understanding to such topics? And one begins to realize that this has always been the script of being human. This has always been, and I really want you to hear that. This has always been the cycle of this particular plane of existence. There has always been our inhumanity. There has always been that struggle and that fight in the illusion. We're going to call it illusion of separation because it's a concept that we have bought into. By concept, the conceptual mind is that we're groomed to fight for what is ours, to even name something as ours. And so you start to see just the avalanche and layers of time after time, era after era, of how this has become a reality. And if you become curious enough in the deeper dives of spiritual non-dualism, you begin to hear things like relative reality, that what you and I are witnessing in this heaviness is a part of what's called a relative reality, meaning that capital R reality is something more attributed to um, God or the absolute or love or wholeness or unity. And you can see the magnitude of the dilemma of being birthed into a relative reality and only knowing this kind of separation, only knowing a life of competition, only knowing and observing inequality. And sometimes when you're on the one side of the spectrum of that inequality, the fury and the despair and the futility that overtakes people when they are caught in that particular dynamic. And then the blindedness or the privilege of someone who might appear to be on the other side of the spectrum. Again, you see that it's sort of a game that one cannot win. And yet we're all trying to play this game. And so when I want to talk about something like balance, I think what one has to consider first is to take the game off of the table and to put in front of us the willingness to see and to be the absolute reality, the capital R reality, the potentiality of God or wholeness or unity, and then do this. What can I do? What can I do, even though it might appear to be imperfect, to embody that or offer that, even if it's to one person? To me, that really is the foundation of genuine balance. It isn't about expecting some other person to do something. It isn't about coming up with the perfect response or takedown of someone who you feel is doing atrocities. It's about action. Um, there's this wonderful woman on social media. She calls herself America's government teacher. Her name is Sharon. Oh gosh, I think it's McMahon. Sharon McMahon. And she posted even back in November of last year. She said the antidote to despair is action. And I've really sat with that and worked with that and offered that to so many people who are just buried or frozen in their despair. And that despair takes on all different kinds of attributes, from rage to lashing out to hiding out behind a computer screen and just railing against things that adds no value to the landscape. And so the antidote to despair is action, but that action is not about perpetuating the hamster wheel of bad news, but it's about searching for the way to provide balance, to do something for one person that you would want to be able to do for everyone. Did you hear that? To do for one person what you would want to do for everyone. So you bring one person a meal. And she wrote down, you bring one homeless veteran some warm socks. You watch one toddler so that their parents can have a break. You drop off toiletries at a domestic violence shelter. You contribute to someone's GoFundMe. You do these things that we might label as small or imperfect, but we do them because we know that that is contributing more to the side of balance and to the side of solution. And there are plenty of analogies out there about the beauty of something that is incremental. And, the analogy of dropping purified water into a muddy vial. If anything is a muddy vial, it is the relative reality of humanity, and it always has been. And when we think about the people, sometimes we call them change agents, people that you have no idea who their names are. They're not famous. Nobody's written books about them. They're not doing it for that, actually. They're just committed to an action to help mitigate the despair. And so they do that in those ways. They do that in those conscious ways where they're dropping, one little drop at a time of purified water into that muddy vial. And over time, if you get enough people doing that, then you know that that muddy vial begins to clear. And that's the thing I think that we overlook or dismiss far too often. It's the small things, doing something small and even seemingly imperfect, but doing it nonetheless. Sharon McMahon saying the antidote to despair is action. It's getting up. It's kindness. It's anything that you can do that you can add to your human day that will take you away from being snarky and brutal and mean online. No one needs your comment that is correcting them. No one needs that. They just don't. There's nothing that you've done from a correction standpoint on a social media thing that has really added to the balm of healing and love. It's just it's just our way of verbally vomiting and producing more and more of the things that have polluted our relative reality. And so, what if you chose to take a fast from that? Yeah, I know that you think you know better. I know that sometimes I think I know better. I know that we get into that loop and I know that we get riled up. But what if you and I just took a breath and we just went and did some loving act? And so I have to think about why we do it. Many of the people that I work with, there is a segment of their lives that are lonely. And so they fill that loneliness up with things like online battling or trying to be clever. I know this sounds really sort of in our face and harsh, but come on, we are suffocating in our hatred and in our division. And to know this is not anything new. Again, this is the cycle. This is the yin yang of humanity. But to anyone who is listening, here's my string of hope is that for anyone who is listening and they hear something that um, Sharon McMahon said about the antidote to your despair is action, is that they do something, that they do take an action, that they do something kind, that they call someone, that they go and offer a ride to someone, that they do these small acts and they do them often and they do them without seeking any kind of publicity or attachment to outcome, but they do it in the still quietness of the purity of that which is God or love or wholeness or unity. And I love the way that she said it, that you do for one person what you wish you could do for everyone. You do for one person what you wish you could do for everyone, because what that does is it gets us up and moving, and it does get us to take an action. Otherwise, we look at the totality of everything and we just throw our hands up in the air out of despair and we go, it doesn't matter. It does matter. You have to believe that it matters. You have to believe. Why do you have to believe? I don't know. I want people to hear this. I want myself to hear this. I want you to know that I'm calling myself out as much as anyone else when about becoming frozen, about becoming overwhelmed, and all of the things that we do in those moments to sort of medicate our horrors. And what if starting right now, wherever you are in your world, the point where you are listening to this, that you actually say as well, enough, enough, enough with just watching and being horrified by the things that are going on, enough with blaming other people for not saying it the way that you want them to say it, enough with expecting other people to do something that you and I have the same capacity to be able to do, even if it's for one person and even if it's imperfect. Do you see where I'm going with this? Because this whole mob mentality of blaming people and the cancel culture that comes with just jumping on the bandwagon of wanting to strip somebody bare naked and just light them on fire is really a reflection of our inner despair. And we can't take it. It's just too much. And so we have a momentary sense of relief when we can rage at someone else. And so take a breath, take a little bit of a holiday from the raging at other people, from the expectations of other people, and go and remember that the antidote to despair is action, your action. And before you can say, I don't have anything to give, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. We can. We can. And it's why we are here. I will add that silence is good, not silence in terms of turning a deaf ear, but the silence that comes when you sit in that silence without trying to figure something out, understanding the mystery of why we're having to do all of this over and over again for time immemorial, understanding that there is no real definitive answer to that, but we're willing to be kind anyway. Will you join me in doing that? Thanks for listening.